Hey team, welcome back to the Building Better Humans Project podcast. This is another episode of Mayhem Mondays, which means we have
Mayhem. Hello.
Mili Mayhem with us. So again, I keep saying this because we're only a few weeks into this, but I'm really enjoying the podcast.
Me too.
Because we get to explore sides of ourselves even. Like we talk about personal development and our life and our goals and our dreams all the time. But anytime, this is another relationship hack for people, anytime we do anything that we haven't done before, I'll often message you and say, that's one more thing that we've done together, that we're celebrating, and I hope we're doing that for the next 40, 50 years, however long I live, 50 if I live to 103. I don't want our relationship, and I know you don't, to fizzle into 9 to 5.
Thing.
Yeah,
I want to. How was your day? And yeah.
I just want to be
always
celebrating.
Want to be doing different things and different challenges. And
I want to be celebrating the little milestones. So even just to go for a walk somewhere we haven't been and we take the boys, there's a message in that, like, hey, we've got to do something again. So this podcast is pretty big. Yeah. So I just want to thank you guys who are watching on YouTube and listening on the podcast.
Asking questions, weighing in, looking at the little clips that we put on Instagram. Thank you.
Because you're giving us really good, a good opportunity to develop our relationship as well by taking on a new challenge.
And we did. We put out the NGL link to get anonymous questions asked of us, and we said that we would answer pretty much most of them. And this podcast will be answering one particular question that is a very personal question, but we are public people, and so that's why we decided to share, but also just to clear up anything that, any misconception.
Yeah. So I had someone message me, and it wasn't someone I knew well, but obviously follows the page, and they commented on one of the questions we'd shared a few weeks back around our relationship and said, oh my God, like enough, like people shouldn't be asking you these questions and you don't have to answer them. And I just want to say, we know that.
Yeah.
We know we don't have to answer them. We don't have to share them with you. If there's a question that came through that was so bad, we just wouldn't answer it because we don't have to. But also, we've put ourselves in a public position. And what I would love people to learn from this is, even when you get tough, challenging situations, or in our case, questions that might put you on the back foot, look for a way out of those in a positive. I heard this thing recently, and it said, in every defeat, look for victory, but also in every victory, look for defeat. And what it meant was every time you're defeated, look for, well, what was the positive of this situation? But then every time you're winning, also look for, well, how do I improve still?
Yeah.
Because either one of those can be a trap. I just wanted to share that because I think it's really important to look for want of a better word, silver linings. And these tough questions we're here for, and this one's a really personal one for me.
It really is, but I hope that, whilst I answer and clear up any misconceptions, there can be lessons in this for people, because ultimately that is what the podcast is about. So the question was, why did you get a divorce? And there was a number of them. So there was quite a few, I will say 3 or 4 questions that came through surrounding my divorce. So why did you get a divorce? And then someone else wrote, I want to know why you got a divorce too, because I shared that one. I shared that question and I said that we'd answer it on the podcast, which we are doing now.
Do you know what's happened? Someone's written, why'd you get a divorce? And you share that. But then you haven't answered it yet, because some people initially thought we're going to answer, I think, on social. And then
it's too long of a story.
Yeah, and a day or two later, they're probably going, oh, just an answer. I want to know the answer.
Yeah, listen. All right. So I guess I'll start by saying we were together for a few years, married for about 5 months. Not a very long time. Obviously, 5 months is a very short time period of time.
So if we say nothing else, that tells you a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And I will start by saying we did have a good number of the first few years. They were good. He did all the things. He treated me well, blah, 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 blah. And I don't want to come across as attacky, because obviously he's not here to defend himself. So I'm not going to come across as he's a shit bloke. Like, I'm just not going to do that. But I'm telling you from my side what happened, because you asked. So, we got married on my 30th birthday, May 5th, if anyone was wondering when my birthday is. Love my birthday.
We'll give you an address to send presents.
So we got married on my birthday, on my 30th birthday. It was good for a little bit. And then I started to find out things that just didn't add up. So small lies. Again, I'm trying really hard not to sound attacky because, again, he's not here to defend himself. But I guess I did. I found out about things that weren't true. And like you said before, on last week's podcast, I'm big on honesty. And
transparency. If you
and
don't know what that means, go and watch last week's.
Honesty and transparency. So I started to get really annoyed because not only were there heaps of small little lies, there were a couple big ones in there as well. And I won't delve into them because that's far too personal for me to go into. And so I started to... There was a massive amount of mistrust between us. We started to argue a little bit more. I used to wonder what he was doing, and I cannot live my life like that. I just simply hate it. So I don't like wondering what you're doing. I don't like wondering whether you're telling me the right thing. I don't like feeling like who you're texting. Like, I cannot live like that. So as soon as it gets to that type of relationship, I immediately want to leave. But because I just married this man, so I'm thinking, what else could there be? And I guess I have to try, but it got to a point where I'm like, find out about, untrue after untrue after untrue after untrue. Just the small things. I won't delve into the big things because it's too incriminating, for want of a better word, I guess.
Can I jump in? I'm fortunate in the sense that I've never felt that with you, but I understand what you're saying, and I've been in those relationships where when their phone pings or when they... off to the side, and they might actually be, it could be texting their mum, but it just starts to feel like something's not right. That's a terrible relationship.
It really is.
And as you know, we know each other's passwords. I've never looked at your phone.
No.
I don't feel the need to.
No.
There's probably been mistrust the other way through actions I've taken, and not drastic ones, just to be clear, but, and that play on triggers. But for you, I've not experienced it your way.
Thank you.
Which is very much in line with who you are.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing for me. So, and that's why, and I've had this feedback from people like, why do you not care when men try and hit on her? Because I trust her implicitly. Like, if I was worried that there was, or maybe there's an opportunity for her to cheat, well, there is, because, that's what it is. But my trust is that you're not going to do that. Yeah. And so, I've never felt the need to look at your messages and anything she has shared with me. If I have had an issue with it, I'll just tell her, and you're really good around that, taking that and on that feedback, and not necessarily changing your behaviour, but explaining to me why it's not something for you to think about or worry about. So I just want to say I've never had to feel that with you, but I've felt it before. I'm sure everyone watching or listening has been in a situation where you're not sure what someone's doing on their phone. It's such a red flag. Like, how does it get better? Like, it's a really tricky one. Yeah.
So, the small lies might have been about what he ate that day, and I'm thinking, why would you lie to me about that? Like, that's such a minuscule thing. So what else are you lying about? And then so it just sort of started here, and then it ended up here, and then there were more things that involved other people that I found out that you weren't being truthful towards me. And then we went on a family holiday, and we were just in a state, like, we were trying to be good, but we were not good. And so I did the wrong thing, which I fully, accept, and I looked at his phone. And I found messages from somebody who used to be in his life. And there was a particular conversation which he had told me about. However, that particular conversation played out completely different to the way that he told me, because it was right in front of my face and I was reading it. So when he told me about it, he said it was one way. It went one way. But then when I read it, I realized that it went completely not how he said it went. So that was just another lie. But this particular lie was worse for me. And it was, I guess, the catalyst because it was involving another woman, and she said really horrible things about me. So she called me really bad names, which if you're a girl's girl, you just don't do. So, yeah. But then the thing for me was that, it makes me emotional. The thing for me is that he didn't defend me. I'm big on that. So,
and I don't understand how you don't defend the person you love.
Yeah. So not only did he not tell me about what she said about me, when I was reading those text messages, he just didn't defend me at all. He didn't say, don't talk about my wife like that,
And that is a bare minimum.
100%.
Which we talked about last week. That's a bare minimum.
Bare minimum.
And
you defend me when somebody says something bad about me behind my back,
Yeah.
and I'm not there to defend myself.
And it was horrible because Mili shared this with me because we were friends at the time, and I'll 100% say we were just friends.
Mm-hmm.
And you shared this with me, and for anyone that thinks otherwise, this was the situation from my point of view. We talked about it on the phone or whatever, and we even caught up and talked about it afterwards. And Mili cried because she said, "This is my husband. He's meant to be my best friend." And he didn't even defend me when someone called me these horrible names. And so I watched you be really upset and emotional about that. And as that relationship slowly disintegrated, I watched you numerous times saying, "I thought he was my friend." But the more evidence you collect of someone either not defending you or actively participating in the things said about you, that's not your friend, let alone your husband or wife or so that's just from my point of view. I watched it. It kind of broke my heart as your friend at the time to watch you so upset that someone, and I was dumbfounded why the words that were said, you would anyone listening, if you knew, would defend 100%.
So that was a really hard thing for me to read on his phone. And, I immediately lost it, which I also regret because the children were very close by. But so, I lost it and I walked off and I went for a walk and I didn't want to come back for ages. But it was at that point I realized, like, I'm not going to continue in this marriage because I will not accept that. Like, non-negotiables we talked about last week as well. You defend me. And you're honest and So that's basically a small version of why I decided to end that.
Do you feel
marriage.
Judged by people for having a marriage that lasted only 5 months?
Yeah, based on some of the things that we got through in
but I mean
NGL
before that
links. I knew that there would be judgment there, but I block out that noise because otherwise it will, if I think about that too much, I've already got all these other things to think about that I don't want to also think about that. But so I decided then and there I didn't want to be in the marriage. And so I said that to him, and then we decided that for, the children's sake, we would live in the same house but try and be amicable. That didn't last very long for me, mainly because I needed my own space. I wanted to move forward, and he was still trying to win me back, I guess, and I was in no way, shape or form going back.
But also some of the behaviours were still continuing, so that was hard.
Yes. There were still lies and,
And for people listening, you didn't have children together.
No.
He had children and Mili had children.
I do miss his kids so very much.
Yeah. I've watched that break your heart, how close you were to the children. And sadly, when people go through relationship breakups, whether you have children together or separately, some behaviours, and in this case, and I'm not being biased, there was so much selfishness, and I'm sorry, but that's what there was, that this person wasn't considering the children, because you did everything you could to stay involved and have him involved. But unfortunately, some behaviours, which I'm sure we'll talk about, continued that just made it impossible.
Yeah. I guess when I decided that, we couldn't keep trying to live in the same place when all these things were going on, I decided I still want to be amicable because I still want to be in his children's lives. And I hope that they had felt the same about me. So I moved into my own place, but I moved 2 minutes away from him just so that the kids could come and go as they please. And I wanted it to still be like that sort of family environment where his kids can come to mine, my kids can go to his. We can still do all of those things, and we can still go on family trips and go down to the beach together and whatever, regardless of the fact that the marriage didn't work. So yeah, I moved into my own place 2 minutes away. And then there was another question that you got, which sort of ties into this, but yeah.
So the question I got, and look, this is a little bit attacky, and please don't feel the need to defend us. We're okay. But it said, and I guess this is the perception that's out there, did Mili leave her husband for you? So the short answer is no, and the long answer is also no. But you're explaining that.
Yes.
And it said, did Mili leave her husband for you? If so, that's pretty poor form from both of you, and probably why you cop flack from people. Where's the loyalty in this world gone? What does till death do us part mean?
Till death do us part doesn't mean that you're going to sign a piece of paper and then sit there willing to accept everything that is a boundary of yours. All your life goes out the window just because you signed a piece of paper and that person didn't live up to the contract. Do you know what I mean?
You have to consistently, and I'm learning this, be winning your husband or wife all the time. Don't just settle into, well, we're here now and you can't go anywhere.
No, but don't be, not truthful. Don't be, say somebody, maybe not in my case, but maybe if somebody was unfaithful, don't just accept that and go, I signed a piece of paper, I'm going to try and make it work, and just accept that. Like, I just don't agree with that. So like I said in a couple of weeks ago on the potty, I'm a leaver. So if something doesn't work for me, I will leave. Anyway, so no, to answer that question, how Glenn and I actually got together does involve this story. So I will tell it. And it was a shocking version of events, but basically I'd moved into my own place, and I'd been there for a few months. You and I hung out a lot every single day, to be fair, because we were training together. We were talking about ideas together. We were delving into the youth space together. This is even before we decided to be together.
And there was definitely a connection there that we didn't realise at the time. In hindsight, I can see how that was building. And I'm sure that was challenging for your ex to be watching that or experiencing that, because we didn't really know what was happening and so on. But anyway, and we're all... Like, I would still drop the boys over there and, I'm not mates with him, but we'd have a chat. Yeah. And then all that sort of stuff.
And then there was one particular time where I was doing something and you did take the boys to his, and you had a conversation with him whereby you said, I just wanted to have a chat with you about something. I am developing feelings for Mili, and I know that, it's been a few months, 5 months or 6 months or whatever period amount of time that you guys are separated. But I am developing feelings for Mili, and I just wanted to come to you as a man and let you know that if those feelings were ever reciprocated, then I will jump on them. And I just want you to know that, because I don't want you to think that I went behind your back. I'm coming to you as a man. And then you also said, if, however, you guys were ever to get back together, then I would step completely out of the way. But I've not told Mili about these feelings, so I'm just telling you. But I want them to have, if anything happens between us, I want it to happen organically, and I'm not going to push it or,
Because I felt connected to you, but I didn't know if that was reciprocated at the time.
Yeah.
So what I was trying to do was be really honourable, to be honest, as a man, because I'm not about that behind your back stuff. So I was just saying to him, I just want to be really clear that I have feelings. And if they were reciprocated, then I would most certainly be open to that. However, we haven't discussed it. And I specifically asked him not to say anything to you. I said, we haven't discussed it. But I knew he was trying to get back with you. I knew from your side of being hanging out with you, I didn't think that was an option. But that was between you guys. And you guys occasionally still went out and did some family stuff. Went out to dinner with the kids and all that sort of stuff, and his parents. And so I just said, if for what you guys end up getting back together, I will not get in the way of that, of course. Like, I'm not that guy. Yeah. So, and that's all I wanted to tell him, just so that he knew, so that if something happened between us, he didn't go, oh, see, that's why you left me. Because that's, to answer this question, that's 100% not what happened.
No.
And I don't care what people believe about the timelines. I'm telling you that wasn't what this was about. So I just wanted to be upfront, so that if something happened in a year's time or 2 years' time, he didn't think this was why.
That same day that you went and talked to him and had that conversation, I got a phone call from him, and he said to me, Glenn spoke to me today. And I went, oh, okay, what about? And he said that he's not remotely interested in you. And I was like, why? Why would he? Like, I'm thinking, why would he just come out? I don't understand. I don't get it. And then he said, and then Glenn also said that he wants us to get back together. Immediately I was annoyed. Immediately I was pissed off at you.
You're annoyed at me.
At you, because I was thinking, like, that I don't want to get back with him. That is not ever something that I'm going to explore ever again, because I can never trust him again. So I don't understand why you would go there, take my children to him, and then try and get us back together. It immediately pissed me off. So I've hung up the phone from him and I've rung you and gone, what are you doing going to my ex-husband and telling him that we should get back together when you know that that is the last thing that I want to do? And there was a little bit of a silence. And then you go, Mili, that's not what I said. And then you told me what you had actually said. And then...
Oh, because you had also said to me, and he said you're not interested in me, which was a random conversation.
Yeah, I was like, how did that even come up?
Because it's not like there ever wasn't. Because it's not like you had gone to him and said, hey, I'm interested in Glenn, and then Glenn's gone, I'm not interested in her. That didn't happen.
No.
So it was the conversation didn't make sense.
No, it didn't make sense at all. But
He must have assumed we wouldn't speak to each other, I guess.
don't know,
or
I
you
guess.
wouldn't address it.
Maybe.
So we showed how little he knew you.
100%.
Because you address everything. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
I like to be clear, as we said before.
Yeah.
So then you said to me, that's not actually what I said. This is what I said. And I was just like a little bit caught off guard because I was like, oh, shit. I was like, so now it's out there.
And my fear was that it risked ruining our friendship because I would not have ruined our friendship for a relationship. So if I thought there was any chance that you had no interest in me, I would not have ever said anything to you because I wouldn't want to, because that makes a friendship awkward and our coaching relationship and everything. So I wouldn't have done that. And so I wasn't ready for us to have that conversation by any stretch of the imagination. And then he kind of forced us into that situation, which could have really went bad. It turned out really good. So thank you, I guess.
It was a blessing in disguise.
Really bad.
But yeah, so... But then one of the big things for me was that as soon as I called him to call him out on that, he didn't immediately tell me the truth on what he did. He immediately lied again and said, and then at this point, it's not only that you've lied, you're actively trying to make me guess between who is telling the truth. And that's such a messed up situation to put somebody else in.
He was doubling down.
Yeah. So I'm thinking, well, given your track record on not telling the truth, not yours, his, I'm going to go with Glenn on this one.
But then the risk was that I become just another man that lies to you.
So imagine if I did believe you believe him, and then you and I wouldn't have continued a coaching relationship. We wouldn't be here today. You know, I wouldn't be one step closer to my boxing dreams. Not that that's all that it was about, but back then it was because that's all we were to each other. Well, we were friends, don't get me wrong, but the main, relationship between us was that you were my coach and I was your athlete. So imagine if I believed him and I said, Glenn, you can go jump. And then we never spoke to each other again. He would run, I'm assuming, with that lie to his grave. And that is such a...
And he made accusations that he's lying to you, he's just manipulating you.
He's manipulating you. He's not the person that you think that he is. He's not the person
and this guy doesn't know me.
Excuse me. He's not the person that, his persona is online.
In fact, if I could go back one step, when this all first started, early on in your separation, he rang me out of the blue and I didn't have his number in my phone. I was like, oh, okay. And he said, I want to talk about what's happening with his relationship with Mili and get some advice because I know you're the personal development guy. And I'm like, I was taking the kids somewhere to Macca's or something, like Samuel and some of the boys for the first time they'd ever driven in the army truck. I'm like, oh, bro, I can't have this conversation right now because, and anyway, so then he rang me back hours later, or I rang him back. And he just said, I want advice. I want to know how to get her back. And I said, I cannot give you advice on that. Mili is my person, like if in a coaching sense, as in a personal development sense even, or a therapist or a psychologist or anything, you can't be working with two people.
But also you knew that that's not something that would ever cross my mind again. I just don't flick a switch and go back. And even then some lies were told to me then. It was all about how I've done everything for her. I supported her business when it was struggling, and none of those things turned out to be true. And I'm very honest with that. I just said, hey, this is what I was told. And that just made you angry because you're like, that's just all lies. So the whole scenario, it could have ruined a friendship. It could have ruined what is now a good relationship. Fortunately, to put two people in front of somebody for them to guess which one is the liar, I think is such a messed up thing for somebody to do. It is very manipulative, but it's such a head F. I know we don't swear on this podcast, but it really is. But
it's almost if I'm not going to have her, I'm going to try and ruin your relationship, even if it was just a friendship, because I'm a bit jealous of what's happening over here. Even if he's unsure if it's a relationship or what it is, but so I'm just going to ruin that as well. That's crazy to me that you're willing to ruin someone else's friendship because I can't have you, so no one's going to have you.
That's crazy. So, I guess from that point on, it just turned really bad. There was a little bit of physical.
Well, before the physical, we were called out. Basically, I was out moving some stuff because we weren't living together or anything by those stages. And you rang me and said he wants to meet us together and he's going to prove that you're lying.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I'm like, oh, okay, I know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But,
so we actually did go to his
place. So we said, yeah, okay.
place.
And I didn't know what to expect. You know, like I wasn't worried physically. Like I wasn't feeling fearful or any harm. Like I know how to fight and I'm a big man and all that sort of stuff. So I wasn't worried about that. But it was just like, this is a weird situation to be called into.
Because you know that what you were saying was facts.
Yeah.
And so for him to be like, run with that lie so hard to the point where he's like, come to my house, sit down in front of me. Yeah.
He thought we wouldn't turn up.
Yeah, but we turned up. Knock, knock, knock.
I didn't talk at all. I just sat. Really.
Yeah, I did most of the talking.
I didn't need to because there was nothing put on the table that went against anything that I said. In fact, it was the first time I saw you in a proper argument where you just had facts and said, do you want me to, you had text messages. Because then he said, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. You know, you did. I've got the, do you want me to read the message? And
yeah,
then he said,
let me get the receipts.
He's saying to her, I don't want you to read the message. She read the message. And it just went south.
Yeah.
And it was like, now you're presented with the written fact that you're lying. That's crazy that you would put yourself
in that situation.
I'm going to double down on this to the point where I'm going to deny until it's there it is. Okay, you got me. That's wild.
It is a bit wild. So I guess at that point I was very, I guess, like, set with my decision of not continuing the marriage. You know, I had already been set, but at that point I was like, yeah, man, damn. Like I'm really, really glad that I didn't continue for the rest of my life in this sort of situation. I don't know what else you could be lying to me about when this is the level.
Years do you waste, you know, always in doubt?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's basically what happened. It then escalated, you know, because we did, again, try and be polite to each other. I still love the kids, you know.
Can I just say then what happened was, now on the table was the fact that I was interested in you. And then the conversation was, well, actually, so am I. And I went away overseas and there was, you know, nothing had happened at this stage, but there was just some messages. And then one day I said to you, or you said to me, I miss you. Like I meant by that, I miss our conversations. I miss you, and then you said it back, or vice versa. I can't remember how it went. But
I said it.
Mili said it first, and then I remember I said I miss you too. And I remember going to bed thinking, this is potentially a thing. And
just because I did, and I never connected with somebody on the level that we've connected. So,
and that answers a question from last week when someone said, "How did it change so suddenly?" That's, now that I think of it, that's the moment where it really changed for me. When you said you miss me, and I thought, oh. Because I go away a lot, and I don't really, and I've got friends and that who are excited when I come home.
Yeah.
Like Digi and people like, oh, you know, go and catch up on a breakfast. I haven't seen you for a few weeks, but I've never had anyone actually say, I miss you.
Yeah.
So that was
you
pretty
know, at
cool.
that point, you had already been introduced to my kids, you know, as a friend. Even when he was still in the picture, you'd already met my kids. They'd come to the gym, you know, all of that sort of stuff. And, you know, my friends meet my kids. You know, if you're going to be in my life, you're going to meet my kids. Because they go a lot of places with me.
They come to fights, they go over.
Yeah. So yeah, you had already met my kids. We had already developed a connection. You know, there was already this level of trust between us, and then when he, you know, did all that and basically forced us to have that conversation, I realized, yeah, look, same. I guess I just didn't want to think about it or admit it because I was going through something else, and I thought it was maybe too early. And you know,
we did still think it was too early.
In hindsight, it probably was. You know, just based on, I guess, norms. But I don't regret anything.
And it put a lot of pressure on our early relationship then because it was forced into the fire and we weren't really ready for that. And so you're still dealing with your stuff and I've got stuff going on and within the business and other things. And it was like, all right, now we're kind of together. And that was pretty intense early, if we're really honest. And often when we've had a few little struggles, I will say to Mil, we started this relationship far more intensely than most people.
Yeah.
And there's so many moving parts in who we are and who we want to be and who our past was, and everything in between was just thrown into this melding pot by by this guy that was like, damn, like, and it, you know, maybe he could have got his aim and it could have ruined it, but I think it's made us stronger.
Yeah.
And we're not infallible. I always think this, and we've talked about this, we've really put ourselves out there doing a podcast like this because we're publicly in a relationship publicly, right? And if anything ever went wrong, that's going to be public too.
Yeah.
And that's intense. That's hectic. I'm up for that. Don't get me wrong, because I'm in this for the rest of my life. But yeah, just you realise when you put yourself under the microscope. So it's pretty intense. I want to address Till Death Do Us Part. What happened to loyalty? Loyalty is one of my strengths. I'm loyal to people to a fault. But you have to have non-negotiables in your life because you go from being loyal to being used. And what I've learned when it comes to loyalty, some people are loyal to you and some people are loyal to the need of you.
Yeah.
And as soon as you stop providing a thing, their loyalty stops. And so I don't think you should be loyalty to the point where you're hurting yourself.
No.
And you need to know when you're being used or when you're being disrespected or any of those
loyalty, one of the biggest things for me in loyalty though is having your back behind your back.
Well, yeah.
Which clearly
so if someone says, where's the loyalty gone? She didn't stay in the marriage.
Well, there wasn't any in there, apparently. So
yeah, I didn't think of that point, but that's a good point. And then the other parts of that conversation or that question, and that is a very attacky question, and I understand that I'm not going to give you leeway for that question, whoever wrote it, but I'm going to say this, that you've written that with a perception of how you believe it already played out.
Yeah, so you've asked a question, but you already believe what you want to believe.
And we're not here to change your mind.
No, not at all.
You can think, oh, this is garbage. Cool. I'm not here to convince. I'm not losing sleep over this.
No.
But I do know that how things played out, and I do understand the connection that we have, and I do understand how it might look to other people. But I've also watched people stay in 5, 10, 15, 20-year relationships that are not healthy.
No.
And I don't know that that's good for you. I watched my own parents do that for years, where I don't really remember a time that they were in love and got on and all that stuff. So when they finally split up, I was like my 30s. I moved out home at 14. And when they rang us, oh, you're sitting down, and I was like, okay, like that should happen years ago for everyone's sake, because and people say they stay together for the kids. I don't know that that's healthy.
No.
And that's a whole other conversation, because your kids shouldn't see you in an unhealthy relationship.
There's a lot of messed up people in our generation from our parents or, that generation going, we'll stay together for the kids. And there's a lot of messed up people. So it's not like you did us any favours.
Like, I actively love you in front of the boys. We will hug and kiss and you'll sit on my lap and we'll talk. And I think it's healthy for children to see that. We've had people in the past write in NGLs and on our social media, like, he's up on the PDAs. And I think, well, we don't really do any publicly, but he's holding hands or hugging or sitting. But in front of the boys, there's a little bit more because they need to know that we're important to each other, that our love for them is unconditional, but this is a relationship too that we've chosen, and it should be respected as such. So, whether it was forced to happen a little bit quicker, sometimes I think a bit more time would have been nice. But also, I think it is what it is.
Yeah. Everything happens, in my belief, when it's supposed to. I know that sounds
even if we
cliche,
don't understand it at the time.
Yeah.
So, the way that question was formulated is what it is. In the second or third part of that was, maybe this is why you cop some flack. Well, no, because it's not true. So we cop flack because of people's perceptions of, and that's okay too, because I'm not here to change your perceptions. I will say this. I will talk about our relationship every episode if there's a genuine interest in that, but I'd also like to put it to bed, all of this stuff, because it's very emotional for you, and I just want to acknowledge how brave it was for you to even talk about this.
Thanks.
Because it is a pretty personal topic, and it is something that we almost should keep to ourselves, but we live our lives publicly. So I don't want to have to address this again, if I'm really honest, and put you in that situation. But if we can address any pieces of our relationship that help you, the people watching or listening, I'm here for that, because I don't think enough people talk about healthy relationships and
leaving when you think you should, and staying when you probably shouldn't,
or working on it when you should. Rather than just going, you know what, we've been married 10 years, she's not going anywhere. Well, no, you shouldn't get the luxury of mistreating someone thinking they're not going to leave, because to add into that, You shared a video with me recently about the PNG culture of the bride price.
Yes.
Which is where, or do you want to explain that?
Well, so bride price is basically where the man's family pay the bride's family an amount of money, or sometimes it can be gifts such as mats or bilums or
pigs and chickens.
Pigs. Pigs is a big one as well. Cows, chickens, any sort of farm animal that they can eat. Lots of fish, and it usually comes with cash as well, depending on how wealthy the man's family is, or depending on what they think that they should give. And it's a massive thing in Papua New Guinea and other places that have this sort of bride prices, because the man has paid for the wife. She has to stay no matter what, and he can treat her however he wants to treat her. So he could nearly murder her. There's domestic violence is massive in Papua New Guinea, and I really hope that that's something that we're on the way to change.
Where police have even sent women back saying, well...
Your family's paid, so you got to go back. Yeah, it's wild.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you got to stay in that situation. That's your husband. You made a commitment to him. So till death do us part.
So here's my challenge for people listening to that. If you're challenged by that, and then you're also saying, but what about till death do us part? You're doing the same thing.
Yeah, 100%.
It's just that there's maybe not necessarily an attached physical violence, or there's not words to say you have to stay, but the societal norm is you really should stay. 5 months, you mustn't have worked hard enough on keeping it. But also red flags are red flags.
Yeah, for sure.
And boundaries are boundaries. And I've experienced in my life, not even in personal relationships, in client relationships, where people have constantly not only stepped over but trampled on boundaries, and I've let it happen for far too long, and then it's almost on you at that point. Well, why did you let it go that far?
Yeah.
So, I think you really need to be solid in boundaries. Now, the difference is, in a healthy relationship, is we get to discuss those boundaries and not be too defensive where possible, and learn from it.
Yeah.
So yes, I get a little bit defensive sometimes and seemingly innocuous things, but that's for me. I have to deal with that. But what I have to understand is how it makes you feel. But ultimately, so far, we've always managed to work through it and get to the next stage of, all right, less and less of that behaviour because I know you don't like that, and more of this behaviour.
Yeah.
So I think, all in all, I'd love to end these conversations and stick to things that help you as the listener and watcher to grow and to develop, and because it's the Building Better Humans project. But I also feel like our relationship and how it started and the divorce, it's a white elephant in the room. So if we don't discuss it, it's always in the room.
Yeah.
So now it's out of the room.
It's done. So there you go. That's why I got divorced. No, I didn't leave my husband for Glenn.
Even that thought is such a low opinion of a human, to think that they would leave when someone better comes along.
Yeah.
Whatever better looks like.
Yeah.
Because if that's who you are, then what's my fear? That someone younger, more attractive, wealthier, whatever the thing is that I think I don't have, you're going to leave. Because that's what you're saying this woman's about.
Nobody could be you, baby.
That's the right answer. And vice versa. So, but again, I just want to acknowledge the courage it takes to answer questions like that.
Thanks.
And hopefully that's now understood, and we can now move on and just talk about personal development, because all of these tough things of who we are, that's what's brought us to be who we are.
Yeah.
So I used to, when I was younger, I used to say, I'm never going to regret anything in my life. And I don't know if I regret things, even though I've used that word in the past, but I look back at things and wished I'd made better decisions.
Yeah, for sure.
I wished I'd not done or said things that I've done or said. I wished I'd totally not found myself in a situation, whatever. I do think that, and a large part of that is having tried to follow society's norms. It takes a lot of courage to not follow society. I heard a quote recently that said that the world is so far skewed away from the truth that it hates on people who tell the truth. And how I took that to mean is that if you want to live an authentic life, you have to live to your own truth. But too often we're formed... I wonder how many people are in a relationship or in a job or in a thing because that's what mum and dad thought was a good idea, that's what society says is a good idea, and they hate it. I just think that's terrible. I had I wouldn't say a friend, but a guy that I knew well years ago, and he was a doctor in Toowoomba, and he owned his own little GP practice, and his wife was very driven around business side of things, but he just liked being a doctor. And they ended up moving into this big medical suite that he was a part owner of, and he had the Maserati and all of the stuff. And I think, and I'm not blaming her, I'm just saying she was really driven around that, the image and the owning the things, and they just had everything. They were big in the private school systems, and then one day he just killed himself. And people are like, what? He had everything, but you don't know if he had everything. All you know is that he had everything that society says is everything.
Yeah, 100%.
But there was obviously something not right or something missing, or there was just, like, to the outside world, it was like, what? Like, confusing. But internally, there must have been something happening.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a very extreme example of if you let society's norms dictate your every action, but you know it's inauthentic to you, man, I'd prefer to be authentic to myself and living out in the boondocks somewhere and no one knows who I am.
100%.
I've chosen to live this public life. You've chosen to live that with me. If Billy came into my world and was totally not about social media and not wanting to live the public life, then I wouldn't even talk about our relationship anywhere. But we are public people.
Yeah.
And we're open to being challenged.
We are. We did reach out for questions. We got questions. We're
you know
answering honestly and openly.
I would love to, going forward, maybe have a theme.
Yeah.
So maybe we pick something that we would love you to give us your opinion of, and then we might talk about our opinion of that and other people's opinions, because I think social media and podcasts are a part of the social media landscape. I think they can be so positive. We can learn so much about how other humans behave and think, and no one's perfect and no one's a guru, but we can all learn from each other.
Yeah.
And that's the community that we're trying to create.
Yeah, 100%.
It's another great episode. We're going to put some links out for more questions, and we look forward to it.
Yeah, I can't wait.